Now, however, it's my distinct honor to present the Alumni Achievement Award, the highest form of university recognition given to alumni. Since 1988, this award has been given to Brandeis graduates who have made distinguished contributions to their professions and left indelible marks in their chosen fields. Since Brandeis started the Alumni Achievement Award in 1988, we have honored many alumni who are currently in their reunion years. I'd like to recognize one of our previous award recipients today, Alan Alter, class of '71. Where's Alan? Hello, Alan. Welcome back. And this year, we're thrilled to welcome two more alumni into this amazing community of Alumni Achievement Award winners. One, a trailblazing scientist whose work has improved the lives of millions of cancer patients. The other, an attorney who currently serves as the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Justice. First, Susan Band Horwitz. Susan Band Horwitz, PhD, class of '63, is a cancer scientist whose research led to the development of the drug Taxol. Using a small molecule derived from the bark of a Pacific yew tree, that's YEW, Horowitz helped determine its mechanism of action, or in layman's terms, how a drug produces a pharmacological effect, a discovery that led to the use of Taxol as a chemotherapeutic agent to treat cancers of the ovary, breast, and lung. In 2011, Horowitz received the Award for Lifetime Achievement in Cancer Research from the American Association for Cancer Research, the AACR. At the time, the AACR CEO, Margaret Foti, said of Horowitz, quote, "Her remarkable career and pivotal scientific contributions have influenced our understanding of how cancer drugs work and how to translate that knowledge into improved strategic treatments," unquote. Horowitz is currently Distinguished Professor Emerita, Department of Molecular Pharmacology, and the Rose C. Falkenstein Chair in Cancer Research, Emerita, at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. We are also thrilled to honor Michael Horowitz for his work as Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Justice, a role he's held through the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations. Horowitz oversees a staff of 500 who have investigated everything from allegations of misconduct by FBI Director James Comey in the run-up to the 2016 election to the FBI's inquiry into physician Larry Nassar's sexual abuse of young female gymnasts. From 2015 to 20, Horowitz was elected by his fellow Inspectors General to serve as chair of the Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency, an organization of all 75 federal Inspectors General. This past April, the Taxpayers Protection Alliance, a nonprofit advocacy group that monitors federal spending, called Horowitz a profile in courage for being, and I quote, "instrumental in documenting the waste, fraud, and abuse incurred during the government's response to COVID-19, and I quote, holding lawmakers accountable for dubious disbursements," adding that he identified billions of dollars worth of waste in the coronavirus response effort. Susan and Michael, please join me on stage. You guys can wait here, and Susan will go first. With admiration and great gratitude on behalf of so many, I present Susan Band Horwitz, PhD, class of '63, with the Alumni Achievement Award, which reads, "An esteemed biochemist, researcher, and professor who has won numerous awards and honors, including the American Association for Cancer Research Lifetime Achievement Award, celebrated for the development of the anti-tumor drug Taxol, used by millions worldwide for the treatment of gynecological and lung cancers." Congratulations. Oh, Susan, I think I have to take that one. We'll give it back. Also, with admiration and great gratitude on behalf of many, I present Michael Horowitz, class of '84, with the Alumni Achievement Award, which reads, "Renowned Inspector General at the United States Department of Justice, charged with detecting and deterring fraud abuse and misconduct within the department. At the helm of ongoing high-profile national investigations and chair of the Pandemic Response Accountability Committee and the federal government's Council of the Inspectors General on Integrity and Efficiency. Congratulations. Oops. Okay. Many of you saw the alums who received these, the Alumni Achievement Award prior to these two individuals, and it's just remarkable who Brandeis produces, who all of you represent. It's just something that after 6 years here still astounds me. When I walk down the hall every day in Bernstein Marcus and see the plaques of all the Alumni Achievement Award winners since 1988, it's just a remarkable group, and I welcome these two into that group. They deserve it. And now, you gotta turn these, are these turned on? Yeah. And now we turn to the best part of this event, is having to hear from our two Achievement Award winners. And I've done this in the past and have enjoyed it, and always start out with the same question. And that question is, we'll start with Susan, and then we'll start with Susan and then go to Michael. And that is, what brought you to Brandeis in the first place? How did you wind up here? You for the PhD, you for the undergraduate degree.
Well, I wound up at Brandeis sort of interestingly. I had attended an all-girls, very traditional college. And when I started to think about graduate school, remember the year was 1958. There were very few women who had their own laboratories at the time. And I visited some very prestigious schools to look at graduate education. And I remember at one, I won't name it, but it was in New Haven. The chemistry department was up on the 10th floor. And when at the end of the discussion, I said to the professor, "Could you please tell me where the ladies' room is?" And he said, "Ladies' room? I think there's one in the basement." That was the end of New Haven. And at other prestigious schools, I was asked questions like, "Why do you want to get a PhD in chemistry or biochemistry? Why don't you get a PhD in zoology and you could work in a museum?" I didn't want to work in a museum. I wanted to work in a laboratory. And then I read in Science that Brandeis was opening a new department of graduate biochemistry. Rather amazing, it was 1958, and Brandeis had graduated its first class in 52. But I came over, my parents lived in Brookline at the time, and what astounded me was that there were two women on the faculty. And this was truly amazing. They were superb scientists, Helen Van Den Akes and Mary Ellen Jones, and they had been hired by the new chairman, Nate Kaplan and Martin Kamen, and they were married, they had children. This is how I envisioned my life. And I said, "I'm coming." And they accepted me and I came. And I've never regretted it. It was a wonderful 5 years that I spent here. I met my husband here. I had 2 children by the time I got my PhD. And I completely changed my life from a young little girl coming in to a scientist. I had learned how to be a scientist.
That's wonderful. I should just note that the biochemistry department, the graduate program in biochemistry, started only as a graduate program, really was a trendsetter for that field in the United States. And in fact, our current provost, Carol Firke, got her PhD in biochemistry in 1984. A similar story in terms of how she wound up here. Just a terrific department with a great history. How about you, Michael? How'd you
I don't think
wind up?
mine's as compelling a
Okay.
story, but my mom's from Boston area originally, a lot of relatives in the area. I was interested in coming to Boston area for school. Went to small liberal arts school. Loved the campus. Loved when I came, walked around. Was looking at Brandeis and Tufts. Liked them both. Tufts rejected me. Made the decision very easy. And best decision that ever happened was Tufts rejecting me because it made my choice the right one.
We will thank Tufts.
Yeah, loved every minute of my time here as well. And to what you talked about earlier and the importance of dialogue and that discussion, so much of what I've been able to use in the years since is sitting in small classrooms with that kind of dialogue and understanding people are coming from a different perspective and appreciating that. And that's what Brandeis was about to me.
Susan, to follow up on your point about what it was like not having a women's room, maybe, except in the basement at Yale, I mean, what do you see in terms of now, in terms of the diversity within the science world and the science educational community? Do you see us moving in the right direction? Do you see us with great challenges? How do you see that in the sciences in particular?
Well, in the sciences, I think there's been a tremendous change since 1958. It's unbelievable. There are so many young women who are scientists and doing a terrific job. We still have challenges, but we're certainly moving in the right direction. We don't have enough women who are chairs of departments, and that's something that I think is very important. But I think most organizations in the United States are trying very hard to recognize women who have made really important contributions to science. But we still have a long way to go. We, and I'm talking about Massachusetts like Brandeis, are probably in the forefront, but there are many parts in the United States, colleges, in which it's difficult still to be a woman and to proceed in the sciences. Mm-hmm. But it has to start in grammar school, where women are encouraged to participate in science courses. And I think when that happens, women are fantastic scientists.
Sure, they are. And Michael, you mentioned prior to this afternoon's session that you were surprised to learn that 7 of your classmates went to Harvard Law School following the time at Brandeis. That makes me ask, did you know when you came to Brandeis that you wanted to go into law? Did you discover this while you were here? Did Louis Brandeis have an influence on that?
You know, I came here thinking likelihood, you know, being interested in history of politics as a major, ended up being an economics major. Took economics here, loved it, and became an economics major. And I thought law school was always going to be a possibility, interned during my summers at local DA's offices and other jobs. But having gone to economics, through the economics program, I actually thought a lot about maybe pursuing an economics postgraduate work, perhaps business school. Ultimately, in doing some internships, I decided on the law career. I was a legal studies minor here, so had the opportunity to participate in the legal program here, had a couple of great, not only academics, but practitioners come in. And I know the legal studies program has just developed tremendously over the last several years. And it's such a huge benefit to see a practitioner and to be with a practitioner, particularly in the legal field, to understand what it's really like to be a lawyer. And so that made me pursue the legal career. But part of it was being a lawyer allows you to do so many different things. You don't have to be actually a practicing lawyer. And actually in this role I'm in, I'm actually not a lawyer. I don't practice as a lawyer. I have a general counsel. He does our lawyering for us. He's got a whole group of lawyers there, and they help us out. I've seen so many of my classmates do so many different things. It's just a tremendous potential career opener for you, as opposed to a door closer for you, which, of course, for all of us in undergraduates, we want to keep our doors open for as long as they can be open. So, but that's how I ended up in law school. But Brandeis, you know, giving me that experience at a small liberal arts school where you could have that kind of engagement with professors was just a tremendous experience.
And it's something we're trying to maintain here at Brandeis. Even as we've grown to 3,600 students, we're trying to, you know, keep that type of really unique engagement between students and faculty at a Research One. Because the research expectations for faculty here are very high, and it's atypical to find that type of interaction at a Research One. You know, I mentioned Brandeis's uniqueness, and Susan, I'm curious about You know, one of the things I mentioned earlier was the way Abe Sacker hired the first group of faculty, and that's one of the reasons we had the biochemistry program emerge as it did in 1958. You know, Abe Sacker was not afraid to hire immigrants, not afraid to hire Jews at the time, not afraid to hire communist sympathizers at the time, people who no one else would hire. Even though they had great standing in their professions, he took that risk. And because he took that risk, he had automatic or immediate success with the faculty in terms of leadership in their areas. And so they built the culture at the time. And from what I understand, and from all the people I've spoken to and what I've read, because Brandeis was tiny, small, some faculty members, you know, did not get paid for the first few years, and they got IOUs written to them by the university. They had to band together across disciplines to really be consequential in the world of science. So you had chemists working with biologists, working with physicists, working with mathematicians, something that's not very typical in higher education. That culture has sustained itself at Brandeis after all these years. There is a interdisciplinary type of work within the science division. As a PhD student, did you feel that? Did you see that? Did you benefit from that? Did you recognize that the type of work going on within the sciences at Brandeis was different?
Well, I only went to Brandeis, so I really can't compare it to a lot of other places. But I always felt at Brandeis that I was very welcome into any professor's office. If I had a question, and of course as a biochemist we had to study quite a bit of chemistry, which was not always so simple and easy for me, but I always was welcome into their office and to discuss any problems. And my interest at Brandeis was in enzymes, which involves not only biology, but certainly chemistry and also some physics. And I was able to work and discuss my daily chemical problems with a whole array of different professors. And that's a marvelous thing, because today we really understand that we need all of the sciences working together to do something like to approach cancer. Cancer is such a complicated disease and on so many different levels that you need many different people with artificial intelligence, etc., to help us to try to understand this disease and how we can help people that have the disease. So it's really crucial.
We're ahead of our time. Why don't we open it up to the audience now to see who has any questions for our two award winners today. Questions, raise your hand, don't be shy, it's Brandeis. No one's shy. Oh.
So I'm guessing that the two of you may be Jewish in background, and you know, coming in this Jewish environment, I'm wondering if you had any things to share about things from you know, the Jewish heritage that may have impacted the science you did, the approaches you take, the decisions you made, and if that was also part of things that you may have sort of further expanded in your learnings from Brandeis.
You first.
Well, I'll say, you know, speaking of Abe Sacker, one of the most memorable parts of my entire 4 years at Brandeis was that first week in school in orientation when he came and gave his lecture. It connected me to what you said earlier, to 1948 and to the history of the school. And his explaining how important the Jewish heritage was to this university. Practicing Jew, so I was connected to the university in that way and to that belief system, but didn't really appreciate it, and frankly wasn't sure I appreciated in my very first week in school here what Emet truly meant to the university and to the culture of the institution. And you know, having been a lawyer all these years, having worked for in private practice clients who were in the science area, you know, if you go into any area with a narrow mind, you can't be a scientist and invent by going in with your narrow views on. You have to have that ability, and it's the same in what I do. You have to have that willingness to have openness, to have dialogue, and that's really what I took away from hearing his speech. It's really that discussion. It's these people can't be hired, even though they're the best thinkers in the country, we'll hire them. And we don't care about the controversy that may arise.
And it will arise.
And it will arise. And that's so important in what I do. It's sitting with my team of lawyers, non-lawyers, accountants, auditors, agents, all the different kinds of professions I have, and having those kind of discussions. There is not agreement on what evidence necessarily means, and you get to the truth by having that kind of discussion. And that's what I took away from university.
Well, I think being open-minded and asking questions, rereading the same thing every week, and then interpreting it. And I think that, you know, scientists have to have an open mind. You can't decide what the experimental results are going to be before you do the experiment. That's why you do the experiment. And sometimes you're amazed at the results because it's not what you had expected. So I think the whole idea of questioning, always questioning what is the truth, what is important, is really very meaningful in being a good scientist.
And just say, we did the Pfizer review a couple of years ago for folks who remember that, and found all sorts of problems at the FBI and how they handled that Pfizer. When we started that review, and this is true for FISA warrants that they're applied for, there are like 20 people at the Justice Department and the FBI who sign them, all the way up to the FBI director and the Deputy Attorney General. And we were told, you're not going to find any problems with that. Look at how many eyes were on it. Look how many people handled it. And yet, there we were at the end of it. It's the same thing. If you're told at the start you're going to know the outcome, you're never going to figure it actually out.
I think it's appropriate for the president to answer that question too, because being at this institution with the history and with the culture that it has, it imbued in, as I said, the culture of the faculty starting from the beginning was not only critical thinking and criticism, but something that I think is very important in the Jewish tradition, which is the ability to self-criticize and to look inward. And boy, you feel it as a president or a provost or a dean. You get that criticism all the time. And I talk to my colleagues, other presidents, and they complain about this or that going on in their campus, and I just say to myself, you have no idea. So the idea of, Jews tend to be self-critical. I mean, it's all the time. You could be hitting grand slam home runs every inning, and yet, somehow you only hit it 380 feet instead of 400 feet. In other words, so that creates, in a way, it's a double-edged sword. It keeps you on your toes. It makes sure that you're doing the right thing. It makes sure that you don't miss what 20 other people missed. But I'd say it's a double-edged sword in that sense. Other questions? One more. Do we have time for one more? Where's Patsy? We do. We have one more question. Please don't be shy. In the back.
I think it's more of a statement than a question. I'm going to give you the perspective from a non-Jew who attended Brandeis class of '57. I think I experienced what I would call reverse discrimination. Because I was a non-Jew, if I and a Jewish candidate were applying to Brandeis with the same qualifications, I got in and he didn't. We had a majority of females in the class. I was a male that was a non-Jew. I had 2 strikes for me, not against me. The Jewish traditions I was familiar with. I grew up in Suffolk Square in Malden, Massachusetts, in the Jewish neighborhood. And I knew Jews from the time I was in elementary school and beyond, before. And I found that the acceptance that I received at Brandeis, academically, I had difficulty the first couple of semesters. I got through high school very easy. I didn't have to do a lot of work, and I breezed through the classes. I expected to breeze through Brandeis. I got hit by a hurricane my first semester. And it was only because of Brandeis that I remained in a university. I had been accepted at BU, and had I been at BU, they would have thrown me out the first semester. But Brandeis, being small, took care of its own. And I did learn from Brandeis that whatever I did in life, I had to give back. It's difficult to explain, but excuse me, I get emotional. but I was taught that you don't just take, you have to give back. And that started at Brandeis, and I have tried to do that my entire life. And I want to thank Brandeis for doing that for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I have to say that, you know, when I speak to, before the pandemic and speaking in cities in large audiences, in large groups, people come up and give similar stories to what you just said, just in terms of what Brandeis meant for them. Very similar stories, and I can give you a few of those, very reminiscent of what you just said, so thank you. Well, Susan and Michael, I want to thank you for both your professional achievements, for making Brandeis so proud, and most of all for spending time coming here today and spending time with us. Really appreciate it. You've done wonderful things in your career with more to come. Even as emerita, I know there'll be more things to come with your wisdom. The wisdom that you showed us today, I'm sure, will be of great value to futures. If I would have had more time, I would ask you what advice you both would give to our students of today, but we can talk about that later and I can convey it for you. But in any case, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And to all of you, I want to thank you also for coming back for Alumni Weekend and for coming and spending time with us here today. As I said before, Patsy and her crew and all people in advancement are doing our best to think about getting alumni involved. The future of Brandeis really does depend on support from alumni. And again, not just financial support, but emotional support and giving back in ways that go beyond finances. So thank you all for coming back. Thank you all for being connected. And we'll see you hopefully later this evening. Thank you. Thank you guys both.